With all the hype surrounding the upcoming Superman reboot that will see the character's origins kickstart a new cinematic universe, I figured that now was as good of a time as any to take a look back at the last Superman reboot that saw the character's origins kickstart a new cinematic universe. I'm talking, of course, about Superman, Man of Tomorrow. Man of Tomorrow was ironically a look back at that man's yesterday, showcasing the character's earlier years. So much so that this movie hits all of the classic Superman story beats. Clark's own planet is destroyed, Clark learns of his intergalactic heritage and takes to utilizing his powers for good, his mother makes him a costume to go along with his moral compass, Clark meets Lois on the job at the Daily Planet, makes enemies with Lex Luthor, works alongside his enemy, winds up getting betrayed by his enemy. It introduces the concept of kryptonite, Superman being powered by the sun. It's almost like a crash course in all you need to know about the Red Blue Boy Scout. It's all there. All the classic staples of Superman lore are pretty much re-established in this movie. It even has some not-so-subtle callbacks back to Superman's earliest days on the big and small screen.
Look! Up in the sky!
I've seen you in action, Flyboy. You're as powerful as a locomotive.
More.
Great Caesar's ghost!
Having said that, there are also some major deviations from the source material as well. For one...
And what's the S for?
Superman.
Right.
3 aliens, the last surviving members of each of our peoples.
I killed all my peoples myself. Nah. Just kidding.
He's not. He really did that.
I like to keep people guessing.
Not to mention, Pa Kent still lives well into Clark's adult life and Superman's career, showing no signs of stopping living. Another noteworthy change is Clark's glasses. Typically, this is something he begins to do when he gets older. Normally, it's a lame-brained attempt to conceal his identity when he's not saving cats from trees. But here, it's depicted as being something he does when he's younger in an effort for him to feel more human, which I think ties better into the struggles of being Superman. The alienation that comes from literally being an alien, constantly aware that he's different and desperately trying to keep that a secret. It showcases how alone he feels in life despite being surrounded by so many people. And I think here, maybe better than in any other Superman movie we've ever seen, we really see how ostracizing being an outsider can be. Which is why it's nice to see him finally share a screen with Martian Manhunter, and to a much lesser extent, a Lobo. Because while he's allegedly the last Kryptonian, he's not the last intergalactic traveler, showing that he isn't as alone as he believes himself to be.
I thought Martians only existed in the movies.
Those movies are terrible.
But maybe the movie's biggest change is to its main threat, Parasite. A character who in the comics is typically depicted as being corrupt and self-serving is now a good man gone bad. He's shown to be a good-hearted family man who's been corrupted into an energy vampire of sorts. All thanks to the careless nature of Lobo. That's a pretty big change to make, and it turns what is a stereotypical bad guy into a fully fleshed out sympathetic character. Parasite isn't just the parasite, Parasite is the person being affected by that parasite as well. With the exception of Parasite's pre-transformation personality, the characters still stay very true to form, and there are actors in these roles that perfectly complement the characters that they're playing. Darren Criss makes for a real good guy. He taps into Clark's sincere, earnest nature, and I think he makes for a Superman that feels a lot less like an omnipotent superhero, and more like a man just trying to do good with whatever power he's been given. His performance is further complemented by vocal parents Neil Flynn and Bellamy Young, who are just perfect as the perfect parents. I would honestly compare them to Clark's parents on the show Smallville, just in terms of them being genuinely good people and feeling like actual real people. Zachary Quinto sounds so authentic as the smarmy, self-absorbed sociopath that is Lex Luthor. There's just something so naturally heelish about his demeanor. But I think it's safe to say that the real standout star here, the real star of the show here, isn't the titular character. It is neither hero nor villain, but instead the anti-hero, anti-villain, known as Lobo. Ryan Hurst is effortlessly entertaining. and he just embodies the absolute chaos that comes with being the intergalactic bounty hunter. Until Jason Momoa proves otherwise, this is the greatest Lobo we've ever got. Additional worth note performances are Alexandra Daddario as a hyper-focused and job-fixated Lois Lane, who honestly plays the part very well, but she doesn't play into the majority of the movie. Don't get me wrong, she has a good role in the story, but that role is really just reporter. She's just always trying to get the scoop, and the audience doesn't get to know that much of her character outside of that. But I also think in a way that's very telling of the character, because Lois Lane is career motivated. She's obsessed with her line of work and being the best. So if we don't know anything else about her, we at least know the most important thing about her. And the audience probably has just as much of an understanding of who she is as a person as her colleagues would. So, extremely on brand for this particular character. And Ike Amati is fantastic as Martian Manhunter. He sounds reminiscent of his predecessors in the part, but it's also weirdly distinctly its own. I don't know how to describe it other than to say I could very easily see him playing this part in previous projects. It's very easy for me to place this performance in shows like Justice League or Young Justice. It would never feel out of place. But I also wouldn't mistake this voice for either of those. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it is good. All of these are without a doubt the standout roles in the film. Not that there's anything wrong with the rest of the cast who fill out the parts just fine, but these performances specifically really stuck with me. This movie has one of my favorite Clark and Lois back and forths, because it's not a focus in the movie, it's just a fixture of the story. At the time, they're still just setting things up. Having Lois laying out her plan to get one up on Superman to Clark, only to have Clark, who is Superman, cleverly divert that? Come on, that's perfect. Again, it's not really the spotlight of this movie, but it is a highlight of the movie for me. One of many. And I know I'm going to catch some flack for this because there's people on the internet who hate this style, but aesthetically speaking, I think Man of Tomorrow is awesome. I know it's not for everyone. The constant complaint is always that the characters look like they belong on the show Archer, but I always thought it kind of complemented the fact that these are originally comic characters. They have those sharp black outlines. But even aside from that, I just think it looks awesome in general. I think the character designs themselves are really great. Superman looks like Superman, Lex Luthor looks like Lex Luthor, Lois looks like a more modernized take on that character. And no joke, this might just be my all-time favorite Lobo look. This might just be my all-time favorite Lobo. I know they didn't really do a lot to change the characters' designs per se, but I just think that they're depicted and translated from the comics so well. Once again, with the exception of Parasite, who gets a full-blown makeover. This character was completely changed both inside and out. Though that's not a complaint, as I think it works in favor of the narrative. Truth be told, this movie isn't all that complex or complicated. It's actually relatively simple, but it is compelling. It's a story about what it means to be human, and more so over what it means to be sentient. About staying true to yourself no matter who you may be. The movie and the characters in it are constantly questioning what it means to be an alien, as the public is in a panic over the appearance of Parasite, believing that they're being invaded by an interstellar foreign threat. But in actuality, this threat is homegrown, because he's not an alien. He's a human being, one who suffered a terrible fate. In a weird way, this movie shows that Supes was kinda closeted about his intergalactic identity. He knew that he was different, he knew that he was from the stars. Yet despite that, he still greets Lobo with this.
This planet is protected, alien.
Alien? They ain't got mirrors on this dump. You're as alien as they come around here.
And in these instances, it feels like the flying man is just playing a part. Acting a lot like the heroic protagonist in those sci-fi movies that ironically alienated the alien at an early age. Of course he benefits from being different, having abilities that most can only dream of, but he's also deeply afraid of what it means to be different, how he'll be viewed, what people will think. But ultimately he finds out that you have to take the bad with the good, which is sort of the whole premise of Parasite. A creature that absorbs all he comes in contact with, the good and the bad, gaining the weaknesses along with the strengths of his victims. In the end, this is something Superman comes to terms with. But prior to that, it almost feels like Superman is internally in conflict with himself. Because deep down, he's still that outsider that just wants to think of himself like everybody else. Yet, at the same time, he's also the spaceman with superpowers. The Man of Steel with the heart of gold. And when Parasite absorbs Superman's essence, he takes a part of his heart with him. And because of this, Superman is able to connect with the walking mastodon through conversation, showing that Superman's compassion is his greatest superpower, the Inhuman's most human quality. He attempts to solve all his problems peacefully and passively, trying to talk things out before using his fists as a final resort, acting verbally as opposed to violently. Even when he's going up against a giant monster, he still spends his time trying to reason with it. The guy can clearly defend himself, but he doesn't want it to come at the expense of his opponents. Superman doesn't hinder or harm, at least not intentionally. Simply put, Superman saves. I think this narrative really shows that monsters aren't seen, they're felt. Which is why the most monstrous amongst them is the one who is most unassuming. The bald guy in a tie. He is way more sinister than the actual aliens. Yet he believes his status as a human being makes him greater than his company. And almost righteous in a weird way. Unlike those old sci-fi movies, the scary starmen are actually the heroes here. And the villain is the man trying to capitalize on otherworldly panic. And poor Parasite. With each passing moment, he further evolves into something that makes his former self a distant memory. Oddly enough, for a brief time being here, it seems like the story is acting as an allegory for... I mean, he literally enters a pharmacy looking haggard, hiding himself in a hoodie, yelling... I mean, forgive me if I'm misreading that, but... yeah, that's how that comes across. And I don't think this works as that. Because I don't think you can really tell that kind of story without a substitute for the cause prior to the effect. In my own personal opinion, anyway. I found this story surprisingly substance-filled, which unfortunately isn't something I can say for every entry in the series. And I think it worked wonders as an introduction to many of these characters. They have all the right players for this plot, and you learn a lot about everyone involved, most past a surface level. It almost feels like a character study of DC's characters from the cosmos. The movie is made up of some truly beautiful moments between characters developing dynamics. And more importantly, Lobo. I mean, what's not to love? What the movie does, it does well. Man of Tomorrow is a standard, early, simple Superman story, with adages that set up future events for this universe. Case in point, the random Batman photo Lois has in one of her articles.
Otherwise, I just copy the design of that nice Batman I always see at the papers in the checkout.
It works well as its own one-off story, but it also works as a solid beginning to what would be a short-lived but fun animated movie universe. If I had any negatives to say about the story, it might just be that the pace picks up a little bit too quickly. I was really getting used to this slow burn build, showcasing the setting of the birth of Superman. But then it all began to wrap itself up a little bit too quickly for my liking. There were also a couple of fake-outs that I'm not really a fan of, if only because it sort of immediately nullifies death in this movie universe. Having Martian Manhunter fake his own death and watch all the characters grieve him, then having Lobo obliterated only to regenerate in the finale, it just makes things feel like there's nothing of consequence, and everything is a facade. If there's no real danger, there's no real drama. Those are the few negative takeaways I have, and they would be problems that I would continue to have with this movie universe as it went on. Regardless, I deeply enjoyed this movie, but I kind of find myself wishing that it was the start of a Superman series rather than a whole connected DC universe. This had a heartfelt story to tell rooted in the character's origins and identity, and I would have liked to see this followed up upon more naturally, rather than just moving along to the next one. Having said that, what did follow was actually one of my all-time favorite Batman movies, so I guess I can't complain too much on that front. With that being said, if you like this video and would want to see me cover the rest of this movie universe's installments, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying...
And
understand why Superman is here.
Oh, and by the way, did I mention Lobo?
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.